Right, all good to go.
Good evening. If you're watching us live or if you're watching us later, welcome. This is you're watching an Ask NSEAD live, and we have the Royal Opera House with us this evening. We have Ruth Payton, who is a stage designer, and Sandra Dutnell, who is program manager. And tonight we'll be talking about create and design a program that goes from Key Stage 1 right up to Key Stage 5. But today we'll be talking about Key Stage 1 and 2, and really with a focus on developing oracy with the program Create and Design. So over straight away to Sandra and Ruth. Thank you and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Sophie. I'll go first. I'll just give a little introduction to the programme. So as Sophie said, I'm the programme manager for Create and Design, and I work really closely with Ruth on the development of all of our learning materials. What the programme is really about is visual storytelling, and we'll go into how we get the young people in the classroom visual storytelling, but what they're doing is creating imaginary worlds in boxes. And Ruth will elaborate on that real authentic process. We're going to really have a primary focus here today, and I will explain a little bit about the fact that through the design brief that the students in the classroom engage with, they spend all of their time really tackling a challenge. So it's very much about creative problem solving, and the challenge, because it's to meet a stage design brief, really helps them to develop empathy, because they're connecting with the challenge, they're connecting with one of our stories from our stage, and they're connecting with others. They're connecting with the director and the singers and the audience if they're responding to an opera brief, or they're connecting with a choreographer, the dancers, and again the audience if they're responding to a ballet brief. So and then obviously they're connecting with their teachers, who act as facilitators, kind of in a production manager role, and they're working alongside their peers, but as individuals. Ruth's going to talk a little bit about how we use pair work and discussion and presentation, but that's all going on just in the natural journey that a stage designer will have, and which is being replicated in the classroom with the students. So we've got something that's authentic to a design process, but it's also extremely expressive and imaginative and artistic, and there's an individual response that's playful, and there's no right or wrong answer. So we really feel like it's an ideal programme to be sharing with this group, and I will come back to this, but we really want to think about how we can work with the members of the group to deliver in the classroom, but also on some of the oracy ambitions that we know that are already embedded within the programme, but we want to enhance. So I think is that enough there, Sophie? Can I hand over to Ruth?
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Sandra. It really gives us a sort of the horizon which you're working, and your aims too. Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And now over, I think, to Ruth.
Great. Yes, thank you. So just bear with me while I share my screen, please. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. Sandra, will you nod if it looks right to you?
It's not in the pop-up form yet. It needs to. That's it. That's right now. Yeah.
Great. So yes, my name's Ruth Payton. I'm a theatre designer. I mostly work in opera, and I work a lot at the Royal Opera House with Sandra on all of the programmes which connect design with young people and the wider community. And Sandra and I have recently become interested in this idea of oracy, and so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about oracy for theatre designers. And I should also mention that as part of my practice, I also teach at a university for creative arts, where oracy is becoming part of my research practice there. And actually, a colleague of mine at the university who teaches improvisation was talking to me about improv for the inhibited. And that got me thinking about how theatre designers could really do with some classes that help them with improv or oracy. And the two are very connected, because essentially theatre designers are introverted extroverts, and we spend most of our time staring into little black boxes, making miniature models of sets. We work at a scale 1 to 25, so a human is that big. And we model up the ideas for our sets so that everyone in the production team can see what we want to do and indeed realize it with us. So while we spend a lot of time on our own, and that process can often take up to a year, we're then thrust into a very sociable and visible situation, which quite often we don't feel, or at least at the beginning, we don't feel very comfortable with. But what I've learned over my 25 years as a designer is that you can teach yourself to be a better communicator and to improve your oracy skills. So designers have to communicate with everyone on the production team. They have to connect with the senior management, with the staff in the rehearsal room, with the staff who are constructing and working on the technical side of things, and right down to the junior level of stage management. We also have to present our ideas regularly to wide, broad, scary groups of people, roomfuls of executives, for example. And we find ourselves negotiating with very tricky people in the arts, as you probably all know. There's a lot of complex characters, and the designers are quite often at the coalface negotiating around that. And we also have to lead teams. So with the design program at the Royal Opera House, we're really trying to give students an authentic process of design, and through design become more confident communicators through oracy ideas. And this picture here is a friend of mine, Ignacy Gattel, and I thought he was a very good example of why oracy is so important for design and how the two are interlinked. So Ignacy and I trained together. He came over from Barcelona, and I trained at a theatre design school called Motley, where there were only 8 to 10 students a year, and it was an incredibly intense atmosphere, and we were being trained up to be the designers of tomorrow. Ignacy was actually the very best designer that I had ever met and have ever met since. His work was completely beautiful, and he managed to get right to the heart of whatever he was working on and communicate it beautifully in the model box. However, he had an acute shyness, what we might now call social anxiety, which meant that he couldn't talk to more than one person at once. And so, whereas in terms of his breadth of feeling and skill and interpretation, he should have been right at the top of our class and graduating into working his way up through the ladder of theatre design. He actually retreated and became a very talented scenic artist. However, had he had some training in oracy, I think that Ignacy would have felt confident enough to have the career which his imagination certainly deserved. Quite often, students that I see have to learn the hard way, because they arrive at university and are suddenly thrust into what we call crits, where you stand up and you tell your peers about your work, usually at the end of the creative journey, and explain to them and the tutors how you got there. And the students that I see are often completely filled with fear to do this. Actually, so was I when I was in their position. And so I'm getting increasingly interested about how we can help young creatives to overcome some of that anxiety so that they can communicate their ideas to people and really be proud and own their own way of looking at the world. It was partly discovering quite late on that I did have the ability to communicate to people that led me to teaching. But it took me a long time to get there because I was a fairly shy teenager and it really took until my late 20s to feel in any way confident about talking in public. And actually it was through the Opera House that I became more practiced and at public speaking, because they increasingly asked me to speak at events with young people to talk about theatre design. And the more I did it, even though I had to live through the terror, the easier I began to find it, until now. I can say that I'm talking to you on this call without any shakes or anxiety, but that wouldn't have been the case 10 years ago when I started. So I really think it's something that we can learn and that we can teach. So reasons, not that I think we all need them, but reasons to embed oracy in the education system would be, firstly, that it enhances cognitive development and learning. And secondly, that it helps prepare children for participation in the wider world. And I think using an arts-based approach can really aid both of those things. And the programme that we work on at the Royal Opera House really seeks tools for teachers to support this in the classroom. So the programme that I just mentioned is Create and Design, and we have various programs. One of them is for the Magic Flute, which is an opera by Mozart, which is frequently on at the Royal Opera House. And the program that we run is for Key Stage 2. It uses 5 lessons to take students through an authentic design course so that they can design their own version of the Magic Flute. And for anyone who makes a storybox in their classes, it's quite similar to that. As an approach. With the 5 lessons, all will have a direct oracy outcome. But I suppose the difference is that the oracy part is just embedded as part of the creative journey. So to give you an example, in the first lesson, we asked the students to imagine a world for a story and to share stories with each other and then make them in plasticine and share them with their groups and then share them with the wider class, so that they are retelling their story a couple of times. We also asked them to make freeze frames of scenes from the Magic Flute. And so in doing that, they have to discuss together the best way to do this and then share their freeze frame with the whole group and talk about their decisions as part of their smaller freeze frame group. So we're beginning to structure and negotiate talking in front of people. We have 2 exercises which are interrelated. One is a mind mapping to the max exercise, and the other is making mood boards. Both of these are very personal, creative responses to the stimulus. But in a way, because it is so personal to the individual, it gives us a moment to encourage each child to use their mind map and their mood board as a stimulus for talking about what they're thinking, what their imagination has come up with, and feeling proud of how broad those imaginations are. And then right at the end of the course, on the 5th lesson, they will have all made a model design. And at that point, they are encouraged to stand up and share their design with the whole class. And so there you have the situation where one child is in front of their work that they know inside out. They know why they've made all the creative decisions that they have, and they feel confident about explaining to the class why they've done it as they've done it. We have created a tool to aid talking about creative work, and this is written with theatre design in particular, but it could be used across lots of different art and design activities. And it is encouraging a broader language of how we discuss things that we see and things that we make. And so just by increasing familiarity with these words can really help people access the way that they express themselves in front of other people. So we can use these design building blocks as a tool to teach public speaking skills. We can also use them to remind children how to listen to other people talking about their work and why that's important. So it's not all about the talking, it's also about the listening. And at the Opera House, Sandra and I are beginning to look at different bodies of research that link the ways that we talk to the ways that we think. And of course, we're in particular focusing on creative thinking. And if the way that we talk shapes the way that we think, then our ways of thinking are also expressed in our ways of talking. So it's a sort of cyclical nature. And I just wanted to finish by sharing with you a couple of my higher education students to show you where that journey might end up. So here we have two of my current first years, both of whom, when they arrived, really couldn't speak in front of any more than a few people. They're both set design students, but recently we're at the end of their first year. I thrust them into a situation where they were working with students they didn't know on a puppetry project. And through this process that I've shown you of having to repeatedly talk about your work, both in the small scale, in small groups, but also to a wider cohort, and then eventually to people you don't know, you can really begin to empower young people to talk about their own creative ideas, about their creative voice. And I think what it proves is that oracy can be a very powerful tool for learning, and by teaching students to become more effective speakers and listeners, we're empowering them to actually better understand themselves and I suppose also the world around them. So I really hope that through the design programme at the Royal Opera House, we can start that process younger. And so by the time your young students make their way up to art school, that they are all confident communicators. So I'm just going to...
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was extremely interesting. Every single slide is filled with content that I would love to learn more about. The kinesthetic learning that's going on, and the way that you the planning, the creating, the sharing is really something I'd love to just learn a tiny bit more about. So how do you build pupils up to be able to present their final design? You could see their joy in their designs, but maybe just a little bit more about that, please.
Yes, thank you, Sophie. Well, I think it is by starting small and starting with what you know. And certainly from a personal point of view, what I've realized is that if I know about something, if it's about part of the way my brain works, then I am no longer nervous about sharing that with people. I don't feel embarrassed about the idiosyncrasies of my own creativity. And that's really a wider conversation, isn't it, about how we need to celebrate creativity in all of its diverse forms, that there isn't just one way, that innovation comes from being brave enough to find out what our real voice is. And that, to me, is linked with expressing that verbally to people, because it's only when you start vocalizing how you feel and think about something that you're really able to get that message out into the world.
Yes. Yes, what I think one of the main purposes of education is for us all to be responsible, but how we do that is by literally having a dialogue with the world and each other. So it's
I didn't really answer your question, which was sorry, I got distracted, which was, so to start off just firstly with the activity, which is creation, and then getting people to talk about why in small groups, and through over 5 weeks in the case of this program, or over a year in the case of something like a degree or in a classroom, you can build that up until the point where anyone is feeling confident about talking to a group.
That's fantastic. And the why is very important in the work that NSEAD has been doing, ensuring that everyone understands why we learn the language that we're learning, the language of making, creating. So thank you very, very much for just sort of adding to your already fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. And I just got a question for you, Sandra, sorry. How would you measure the impact of the design program on oracy? How would you or can you measure the impact of the program?
Yeah, well, so we all the time we take feedback surveys at different touch points with the teachers that we're working with. The courses are available 100% online, flexibly for anybody to do, and they're free. But we also run CPD sessions where we take the teachers through what they can expect, and also the spirit of the learning experience and the climate that we want them to create in the classroom. And so we get feedback from them that way. The slides that Ruth was sharing, there were lots of visuals in there. That's actually things that a school in Rochdale called St Patrick's Roman Catholic Primary have been sharing with us. They set up a D&T club to be able to deliver this. So there's informal ways, but what we want to do, and there's formal ways that we have for measuring the impact of the overall course and program. But what I'm looking at in this coming year is being able to try and have some test beds where we kind of benchmark where the students are starting from, and look at them at the beginning of the course, and look at them comparatively at the end of the course. But also just in general, I would like to encourage people to deliver it in the classroom with an oracy kind of lens, and really be thinking about how they're already looking at oracy in their school, and whether in these art and design lessons or in these D&T lessons, they can actually see, things happening that they might not be really thinking about observing, because they're in a different lesson and thinking about it in a different box maybe. So we'll do some formal things, and we would like to encourage people to do some things informally. Oh, you're on mute, Sophie, sorry.
Yeah, so I have another question about how can I can see that it's over a series of, I think, 6 weeks. How, if a primary teacher is watching this at any point, say in the next few months, how could they get involved? What would they do? How can they get involved in the programme?
So the courses are all available on the Royal Opera House School's website. So it's roh.org.uk, and it's got /schools. So you can find them all there. Create and Design has an email account, so it's createanddesign@ROH. We can share that, I'm sure.
Yes.
In terms of how they can get involved, they can also look for the CPDs that we run. But really, I would encourage people, if they come and they're looking at this session and they're particularly keen to think about how they can empower oracy in the classroom through art and design and through the delivery of the program, I would really ask them to get directly in touch, because it would be great to involve them in focus groups that we plan to run, and make sure that we're we're tracking what's going on out there. I should say that it's really it's 5 hours of learning that we've created units for, and as an example course. But how people deliver it, it might be over a longer period of time, or we encourage people to look at their learners and think about what the goal of the activity is, but to then modify that in their classroom and with their learners to suit, so that they can, you know, really kind of live and breathe the no right or wrong answer kind of ethos. So yes, but the lessons, the courses are always available on the website, and they can be done 100% independently.
Ooh, so can I ask you, perhaps could you give me an example of how a starting point for somebody who does want to do it online, who is keen to just experiment and try out with their pupils the program? Could you give me one of, you know, I love the plasticine
Yeah.
people and, you know, the kinesthetic learning, and that how language and conversation might develop, and the freeze framing would just, you know, makes my heart sing. Is there any examples you have of, like, this is something somebody could try out?
Yes. So basically the stimulus that the teachers and the students respond to is the music from the production. And so
Ooh.
I've been in other sessions run by this organisation where people have done drawing to music exercises, and we use drawing to music as one of the units in the lesson. So I think that would be a great way in, just creating that time and space in the classroom to listen to some different music, and then use the example lesson to think about things, how you respond to mark making in an abstract way, but then how you respond in a way that's more thinking about, like, what component parts start to become part of a kind of a scene. So I think that would be a great way. And would you agree, Ruth?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And also then, and the freeze framing is great, because then they can take the ideas that they've come up with, and you don't even have to say to them at that point in time that the music is from an opera, that the music's from the Magic Flute. It's just music to be inspired by. They can take those ideas and they can start to think about what they would look like as a freeze frame, or what they would look like as a piece of sculpture. You know, this is you could test out whether the class responds to things in that way without even thinking about opera, or going wholeheartedly into the whole course.
And I can imagine that there are so many, there's so much interdisciplinary learning. I was thinking about the scaling, the 1 to 25.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the learning that comes. Sorry, Ruth, that must be something that is again, the experiential learning, and really showing how that works. I love the little people, you know, the idea.
Yeah.
This
I mean,
size.
there are definitely hard links to the curriculum, but I think I am biased, obviously, because this is my world, but I think learning and responding to texts and music and words written by other people that cover some of the great themes of humanity are just fantastic points of social and emotional learning, which is why they're such great resources for us all, both young and old.
I think that is the perfect note in which we end this fantastic learning experience for everyone that will be watching it. Yeah, I really can't thank you enough for sharing what I hope more people will get involved in, because it really does change lives. Going to the theatre, going to the opera, it's for everybody to do. And thank you so much for opening up to our young artists in Key Stage 1 and above. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.